All right. Now we should be good to go. I think. Maybe? Maybe? Okay, it does work. Okay, we fixed it. Amazing. So, if you guys are here, thank you for sticking around. I just had to fix the thing, but it's okay now. I finally got it to work. Uh, I don't know what happened to the other stream, though. I might have to check and see where it went. But, we're at the beginning. And don't worry, I may have to do something with this. It's perfectly fine if you guys are coming to the stream late. So, let's go ahead and get to the thing, the meat of the situation today. As I was saying before, but before I, effed it all up, we have a fun video today. A very fun video. Uh, and it's going to be amazing. So, recently, if you guys aren't aware, this isn't a video, but yeah, we can laugh at the guy, at the dude, but he came out with a video today, and I'm sure you guys have probably not seen it. It is this one right here, and I don't know, I don't know why that we have to do this two times in a row. It's almost like Geoff has no other brain besides one of a very special boy. So, especially on a day of all days. Hashtag this is a hashtag NECRO no bully. We're not a bullying channel, I promise.
A year and a half ago, I released a video called Anime Cheat Sheet, where I gave a jokey summary of the first 4 parts of JoJo as a primer for the then newly released Part 5.
Which, by the way, on the basis of you don't want people to go into this cold, you make a video like this, and that's perfectly fine. But the thing that people didn't like is the insinuation of telling them that they should skip parts, which you should never do if you're watching JoJo. So you should always be on the lookout. No, this isn't a bully. We're not a bullying stream anymore, okay? We're just critiquing hashtag no drama about a, I don't know what you want to call this actually.
The video was mainly intended to make existing fans of the series laugh, but I presented it as a way for newbies to get up to speed on the basics so they could watch the new stuff weekly. And in response to that, a certain segment of the JoJo fanbase, accounting for about 25% of folks who rated the video and maybe 2 or 3% of its total viewers.
That's a weird assumption to make, that the people that came to dislike your video were not real fans. I think that this is something that we need to work on, Geoff. People that dislike your video aren't detractors, they just think that what you said was incredibly fucking stupid. But I guess if we had to lump them together, I guess this is the way that you do it.
Lost its goddamn mind. You can't be around the JoJo fandom without at least being aware of the never skip parts meme, but I realized in that moment how deadly serious some of the fans are about it.
Yes, JoJo fans are very serious. I mean, you don't... Let me put it to you this way, chat. You can't watch JoJo parts out of order. Because when you start to do that, then you don't know who the characters are in the part that you're watching from the previous parts. You really have to be on the lookout if you're trying to keep a coherent story together. And I think that JoJo does a really good job of that by having multiple parts. And it's not like they're gone. You can still go read them. You can go watch them. That's why they've been releasing the anime in order. If they didn't care about order, they wouldn't be releasing them in part 1, part 2, and part 3. They wouldn't be doing those things. Instead, they would leave it up to you, the viewer, to figure out, and then you could blame the company. But instead, it's all here for everyone to see.
And for a long time, I felt really bad about how I made that video. I do think it's okay to start JoJo at whatever part you want, but by choosing to introduce it as a thing to help new viewers do that, instead of, say, a refresher for existing fans, I'd inadvertently created this rage-inducing 45-second barrier that was stopping the people who'd probably enjoy the jokes I was making most from getting into the video at all.
Well, it's because they're jokes, and we know how your sense of humor is. Usually it borders on the line of, wow, this is really clever, or, man, this is an incredibly nuclear take.
But then, about a week ago, when those give-a-take that'll get your blank card taken away tweets were doing the rounds and a JoJo one popped up, I decided to say, it's still okay to skip to a part that interests you.
By the way, I would never have seen this tweet, because unfortunately Geoff has me blocked on Twitter. Who would have thought that an anti-tuber of all people would block NECRO XIII on Twitter? The world may never know.
After reading some, to be clear, not all, of the responses to that tweet, I stopped regretting the intro to that video.
Wow. No one cared.
I realized that what I'd actually done was taken a bunch of objectively hilarious Joe jokes and with just a few words of framing rendered them completely inaccessible to the kind of JoJo fans who say other people don't deserve to enjoy the series at all if they don't watch or read it the right way.
No one says this. So I don't get what this is. This is the no true Scotsman kind of talk that we're looking at here. Oh, well, if you don't watch JoJo this way, I guess you're not a real JoJo fan. But that's not what any of them say. They say if you want to understand the story, or at least these characters, then you should probably start from the beginning. But again, this is all based off of Geoff and the small circle of people that surround him. The ones that probably don't care about actually consuming product in the proper way. Which, to be fair, you could watch JoJo from part 1 all the way to 8. But if you don't watch them in that order, then you have no one to blame but yourself. Because the story is pretty much laid out there for you.
And there's something poetic about that. I don't like gatekeepers.
We don't like gatekeepers either. But I guess probably not in the way that you're thinking. We as a community, which is some weird talk anyways, but us as the community, we don't want people to come in and ruin something that is already here and existing. So, for example, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure here. If you wanted to watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, there's no one stopping you from physically watching it. You can't just say, oh, well, wait a minute, you're only 18? Sorry, you can't watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. No one's doing any of that. What they're saying is, this is generally the way that you would watch it. This is the way that you would want to be able to get the entire story at its fullest value. But instead it's, these people don't want you to enjoy thing.
In my opinion, which is also a fact, the only people who really aren't real fans of things are the ones who actively try to get in the way of other people enjoying those things on their own terms.
That's the no true Scotsman thing that we're doing here. So the gatekeepers, they don't want you ruining the thing. If there's a way that you need to consume episodes of JoJo or read the chapters, I would take their advice for it. And I guess he's going to bring up something discourse, because apparently there always needs to be an ongoing discussion, which kind of is a little weird because aren't memes kind of a discussion in a way? Maybe not.
Because those people no longer want what's best for the thing they like or its creator, which is exposure, support, and healthy, evolving fan discourse. They just want to turn the space around it into their own unchanging personal comfort zone.
That makes no sense. If people are gatekeeping their hobbies, which I implore you to do, make sure that you keep out the bad. Make sure that you keep in all the good things, the things intact that you want to see. That's why right now we have grifters talking about Uzaki-chan and her big old titties. And they're getting upset about it. It's like these things have a cycle, and when the cycle comes back around, we'll be talking about JoJo again in another year, right before part 6 drops.
Now, of course, not everyone who objects to skipping parts is like that. Some aggressive JoJo fans, maybe even most of them, just want to make sure that people who get into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure get the maximum possible enjoyment out of it.
That's really what most, if not all of the fans want, is that they want people to enjoy JoJo to the best. And if they skip around, or if they don't do the thing in the right order, then it makes no sense. See, we didn't retcon JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so if you guys have ever looked at anything that might have had a prequel, and it didn't come out until afterwards, I guess the Fate series is kind of that thing. They had Fate Zero come out after Fate Stay Night, which you could take it or leave it. But that came out after the fact. So how would you know who King Arthur is, what her ambitions are, besides watching it all the way through, or even at this point knowing what happened prior? Because they do bring up a lot of hint, hint, hint a lot, and it's out there for everyone to see. But he won't bring that up.
I can definitely see where you guys are coming from. I know I personally appreciated having a friend encourage me to stick through some of the rougher episodes to get to the good stuff when the anime first aired, but not everyone's like me.
And that's good. I think that we should stop people like you right in their tracks.
And you should be cautious that you're not amplifying the voices of the gatekeepers, and that your encouragement doesn't just encourage people to skip the series altogether.
You can advise people to do something. It's literally, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. So if I tell people, it's probably best you don't skip these parts if you want to know who these characters are, if they don't listen, that's not my fault. Everything is there for them to read. Or to watch, because the anime it's doing pretty good.
Because I'm pretty sure all of us real JoJo fans can agree that a life with some JoJo in it is better than one with no JoJo at all.
If JoJo didn't come out in America in any capacity, I think that we would all just be fine.
And I'd extend that sentiment to all of the anime and game and manga and film series I love. That's why I'm making this video.
Is it?
To make the case that it's totally valid to get into JoJo or any other thing you think might interest you by jumping over the parts of it that are getting in your way, trying out the bit that interests you most, and if you like that enough, going back to the other stuff later.
That is such an ass-backwards way of thinking. So, chat, for example, if you were to, I don't know, play... we'll make up something here. If you were to play, I don't know what's a good series, Black Ops 2, right? Call of Duty Black Ops 2. In Black Ops 2, they kind of hint at a lot of the events that took place in Call of Duty Black Ops 1. But if you don't know anything about those, I mean, this is like the worst analogy I can possibly make. If you were to look at it and you were to say, oh, well, I don't know who this character is, but apparently they were in the first one, you wouldn't go back and immediately play the first one unless you hadn't played it before anyways. But most people would probably just be okay with playing Black Ops 2 if they're playing multiplayer. No one plays a story mode in those games. Let's be very real here. You don't play Call of Duty for the story. You get it to get kill streaks and then get mad at people RPGing you.
Or not if you don't wanna. And in some cases, for some people, that can even be the best way to get into a thing.
No. Just no.
The first half of Dragon Ball only made it to air in North America several years after Dragon Ball Z was already an international mega hit.
And do you know the reason for that Mother's Basement? Do you know the reason for that, Geoff Thu? Let's see if he brings it up, guys. I would really like to know the interesting history behind it.
To American and Canadian otaku my age and older, the story of Dragon Ball began with an evil monkey alien intimidating a random hillbilly, bullying a presumably less evil green alien, then flying off to a tiny island to confront an orange guy with a flying cloud, his brother, it turns out, while he was busy introducing his newborn son to a bunch of other people we didn't know. Then they flew off to fight over that baby near the monkey alien's spaceship until the green alien came back to kill both of them and take the kid.
Do you see how poorly he's actually trying to make this sound? Have you guys ever been, well, that's crazy. If you're not on Twitter, don't go on Twitter. But have you ever seen those tweets where it's like, describe your certain thing poorly? That's what he did here, and God, he did a grade A attempt. But the story behind Dragon Ball Z and how it came to be here in America is much different than that of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I don't know why he's using this as a comparison.
It was a confused jumble of a narrative introduction, and if you were anything like 6-year-old me, it had you hooked regardless. DBZ's distinctive art style and intense brand of action needed no further introduction, and the mystery of who all these people were and how they all knew each other only added to my desire to learn more about it.
But you couldn't do that. So this is the point in the video here, because I only watched a little bit of this, just kind of getting the gauge. But this only works in the regard that you don't have access to it. So back in the early, I guess it was early 90s, the mid 90s, late 90s, somewhere in there. If you were watching Dragon Ball Z and you didn't have access to the original Dragon Ball series, that wasn't the fault of you, the viewer. It was more in the fault of Funimation for giving you a story after the fact. So when they wanted to give you Dragon Ball, which was years later, this was what happened. You didn't have access to the internet. Not everyone did. We live in modern years, so where we can just get anything at our fingertips. So technology back then wasn't nearly as advanced, which is why this doesn't work.
And I didn't need to know much about them to grasp the essential elements of the weird monkey alien family drama that was unfolding before me, or to understand the threat posed by the even more powerful monkey aliens who were coming to do an invasion and get the magic wish balls, which are a thing apparently now.
The magic wish balls. Thank you, Geoff.
And even though my young mind had no concept of what metal even was, I understood intuitively that the tale of Goku's journey through hell itself to get stronger and fight those big bad monkeys off was metal as fuck.
It was okay. Let's not hype it up too much.
Without knowing any of the backstory, my friends and I enjoyed the heck out of the entire Saiyan and Frieza sagas, and when we finally did get Dragon Ball in Canada, it felt more like an oddly comedic prequel to Z than a truly essential part of it.
Because you didn't get it until afterwards. So how can you know that thing exists without knowing that... Just whatever.
While I personally enjoyed it immensely, a lot of my DBZ-loving friends never liked or finished the original.
Do you know why that is? Let me explain to you guys why new Call of Duty bad, actually. The new Modern Warfare is a... I wouldn't say it's a fun game, but it's a game. You could look at it as this new game isn't nearly as good as the old one. They did retcon a lot of stuff in the new one to be like the old ones. It's kind of weird, but no one would do this if you went back and said, man, those other Call of Duty games are great. These are the ones that you need to play first. No one's going to go back and play Call of Duty 4 because it's virtually impossible because all the lobbies are hacked, but also because people just kind of see it as an afterthought now. You don't get to bring out a thing that is past the origin story and then say you have to watch this first. No one's going to fault you for going back and not watching the original Dragon Ball. They're not going to. They'll just say, yeah, Dragon Ball Z is pretty good on its own. Because that's how you write stories.
And given that they still followed Z for nearly 300 episodes, longer if they gave GT a shot, made fan content around it, and played a lot of the video games, I'd still call them all hardcore Dragon Ball fans.
No, that's not how that works. They're not hardcore fans. Hardcore fans, and this is why elitism is probably what you would call it. Elitism is what you would call this specific case. They're not hardcore fans, they are fans of a series. I'm not personally going to stop you from saying that you're a hardcore fan because I really don't care that much. But if we're going based off of regular definition, people that don't consume all of the media aren't hardcore. I think they call them secondaries.
There's a reason Nobody Watched Dragon Ball is a meme in the show's fan community, and there's a reason that Dragon Ball Abridged was able to start in the middle of the story with nobody complaining about it. This chaotic in medias res introduction is just part of what DBZ is within our pop cultural context now. And
you can kind of know what JoJo and Dragon Ball is about just from the memes alone. People will tell you, they're very open about telling you what is happening in a scene.
Considering how many people love Dragon Ball Z, considering the wild, nigh unprecedented global success it's enjoyed and continues to enjoy, and the sustained cultural impact it's had in North America in particular, it's hard to argue that that was to the series or the fans' detriment. Funimation banked on the idea that young Americans would enjoy the series more if it just jumped right into the action, and they were clearly right.
I don't know if this is true. I can't confirm or deny. But if I'm not mistaken, isn't Gen Fukunaga, the CEO of Funimation, doesn't he have a relative at Toei Animation, and that's why they have the Dragon Ball license? Like, Toei Animation is making Dragon Ball Z related properties, and then they gave it to Gen Fukunaga. I mean, I could be wrong. Someone will probably fact check that for me in the comments, I'm sure. But they did kind of bank on something that was a tried and true method in Japan and said, man, we really want to bring some anime over here to the West. And they did.
And that wasn't just some happy accident. The whole reason that Dragon Ball has two big status quo altering time jumps built into it, and the reason that it's broken up between those jumps into distinct sagas that focus on self-contained villains, is to allow new readers and viewers to pick the series up in the middle without feeling totally lost.
Well, that's the key word there. They wouldn't be totally lost, they would be somewhat lost. So if we're looking at this clip, for example, obviously we know Frieza dies anyways. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen something that has 400 episodes. Frieza dies, and he shows up in the later seasons. He even shows up in Dragon Ball Super. So if you watch Dragon Ball Super and you're just like, man, I wonder like why this Frieza guy's so important, you would still kind of have to go back to Dragon Ball Z. So he's not really making a good, compelling case here.
Out of necessity, it was designed to be discovered out of sequence. So is
designed? That's a weird way of putting a thing that doesn't exist into effect. It's not designed to do a thing. It's because they wrote a story. That's it.
Is almost every TV show that's not a streaming original. Before the existence of streaming platforms,
that's a Crunchyroll shill segment.
That was just how you found new shows to watch. You'd surf around until you saw something that could hold your attention, enjoy the self-contained elements of that episode's storyline, and then, if you liked it, you'd keep following the series, trying to piece together whatever you missed until a rerun or marathon came along to help you get caught up.
That's the fault of modern technology. So back then, if you're all kids to me, if you kids were able to go back in time, let's just use our thinking brain here for a second. Toonami would obviously run their stuff in the middle of the day. Sometimes they would have a marathon for like an hour or two, who knows. And they would have all of the episodes kind of broken up sometimes. Like if you were just watching it on a random day, and if you missed a day, guess what? You're out of the loop. But now we have the internet where you can go onto not Crunchyroll and definitely not Kiss Anime, where you can download entire seasons of shows and you can watch them all whenever you want to. You can take them with you. It's modern technology.
Shonen Jump's entire business model is built around the idea that readers will buy the magazine to keep up to date with a series they already like from TV or tankobons, and then check out the other stories printed alongside it because, hey, they already own the whole thing and they may as well get their money's worth. That's why they're always cycling in new series.
But I thought you said it was because of exposure, but does exposure not matter now?
But it's also why every successful long-running Shonen Jump story is broken up into discrete arcs and sagas with self-contained plot lines and unique supporting casts.
That's not true either. In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, since this is the video that he chose to title it after, in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, those stories, they're not really self-contained. If you think about it, they're not really self-contained. So if you were to watch, we'll just make up one here. If you were to watch part 6, and they keep mentioning Dio, how Dio is essentially the influence for the main villain in that arc, if you will. You wouldn't know who the fuck Dio is unless you went back and watched part 3, or Even if you did, you would be like, man, what's the big emphasis on this dude? Why does he know all of these characters? Then you'd have to go back and you would have to watch part 1. Do you see my point here, Geoff?
These series need new readers to stay competitive, and these arcs and their new characters give those readers a chance to enjoy a more digestible part of the story in the hopes that they'll eventually be hooked enough to go back and binge the rest or just keep going from there because, again, they're already buying the magazine for One Piece or Haikyuu or whatever. They may as well.
They don't do that, though. They already, see, when they write a story, they're not going back and telling you every single thing that happened. It's not on, like, the last episode or the last season of this. They're showing you the story as it's going forward, not as it's going backwards.
JoJo takes especially great advantage of these principles. The entire series is broken up into short, digestible story arcs whose high concepts and underlying themes can be explored in at most a dozen or so chapters, with closure coming in the form of a satisfying minor villain smackdown at the end of each one. And these villain arcs build up to conclusive finales in the space of just a few years.
They're not conclusive, though. They've been battling literally enemies of Dio for how long? Since part 1. So part 1, Dio made enemies. Like he made his own army of thing that go out and try to kill off the last of the Joestar bloodline. And that's kind of still a thing, even all the way into part 6. And then if we really want to get technical, technically into part 7, but Dio doesn't really exist then. It's only Diego Brando, so you really don't get to have that conclusion that you're looking for. None of these conclude. They just go up on the list of things that Dio has fucked up.
Giving way each time to an effective series reboot with an entirely new cast, central antagonist, and storyline to follow for new readers to jump on the JoJo hype train. Honestly, it strikes me as pretty asinine that hardcore fans of JoJo in particular are so insistent that people follow the one proper orthodox reading order when Araki has gone out of his way to create so many different accessible jumping on points for new fans.
He hasn't, though. I want Geoff Thew, this is what he should have done. He should have told me where those jumping off points were. So if you were to watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where would you start at? And then ask yourself, man, if I started here, would I know any of these characters? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't know any of these characters, then guess what? You're not doing it the right way.
Out of a cast of dozens, only 7 characters play significant roles in more than one part, and 3 of those are split between Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency. The long-term continuity of JoJo only really becomes essential to plot comprehension in Part 6 and arguably the very end of Part 3. In
What?
the rest, it's mainly lore, fan service, and non-essential character development.
But every part has a new... whatever.
And I do think understanding all of that can enrich your experience of each individual part, but it's silly to argue that continuity is the core of what makes JoJo good.
There's so much continuity in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that we can tell that Geoff Thew hasn't quite grasped onto that entire concept yet. So if Dio, for example, didn't exist, none of this would happen. If the mask didn't exist and they moved everything forward in part 1, part 2 wouldn't exist. And if Dio hadn't been locked into the casket and he had died, part 3 wouldn't have happened. It is actually more continuity heavy than you would have believed, Geoff.
If it was, Araki never could have gotten away with rebooting the series in a parallel universe, and
which, by the way, don't worry, we'll get into it.
And also, he probably wouldn't have wanted to do it in the first place.
So, let me go ahead and tell you something very important. Back in my day, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7, Steel Ball Run, was never known as Part 7. That was an afterthought. Part 7, as we know it now, Steel Ball Run, used to be on its own. That's how they advertised it. That's how they marketed Part 7 to people, was that it was completely separate from the original JoJo's Bizarre Adventures from Part 1 to 6. But does Geoff Thew bring that up? No.
That's the kind of thing writers do when they feel like continuity is bogging their stories down.
Okay, well, he had the universal reset, which happens at the end of Part 6, and that happens because, just read it. I'm not going to tell you how it ends.
Now, of course, in the age of the internet, we no longer need to discover and experience stories in such an archaic, inconvenient fashion. Nor do we need to worry about commercial breaks.
Oh boy, is this a commercial break? Is he gonna... Yep, he's shilling something to me. Don't worry, we're gonna skip past the shill segment, because I'm sure if you guys are playing Shadowverse, you don't need Geoff Thew telling you to play Shadowverse.
And other means. Now, one of my favorite things about Shadowverse...
Oh, great, it's still Shadowverse. Oh my god, I thought it was over. Here it is. Now it's over. Sorry, chat.
Form. We can access almost any piece of narrative art that exists in release order on our own time. But that doesn't necessarily make it invalid to break sequence, and it certainly doesn't mean that the pilot episode or chapter of a story will always be the best introduction to it.
It's literally the very beginning. How in the world do you not get this? It's the beginning!
With TV shows, manga, any kind of serialized narrative really, the artists making them are figuring out what their story should be and how to tell it as they're telling it.
You're using the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as an example here. Do you remember, Geoff, that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out in the 80s? And that they've already had pre-established lore with all of its characters? That's insanity, right? It's almost like they had a story, and this is just another part of it. So if you want the full details of the lore of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you would go back and watch the 80s cartoon, but that's just my assumption.
Few series are totally planned out in advance, and even when they are, even in the case of things like One Piece, plans change.
One Piece is completely planned out. From what I've understood from the One Piece community, is that all of the arcs are completely planned out. It just hasn't ended yet.
New, better ideas arise. It can take a while for a series to really hit its stride, and sometimes you'll get your best impression by jumping forward to a great standalone part, then going back to experience the build-up to it.
So let me ask, Geoff Thew. So if you're reading a book, and let's assume that you've never read this book before, this is a completely new story, would you then just skip to the middle of it? I don't think that you would. You would read it from the very beginning, because that's how the story is meant to be read, is the way that the author intended. But sure, let's just make this point.
Now, it's important to be aware that not all episodes or ostensibly self-contained story arcs are created equal, and not all of them make for good jumping on points. Some of the...
But you just said that they had parts or episodes that were standalone. So is it not all of them, or is it? Because we've heard a contradictory statement.
The very best parts of serialized narratives are moments that build heavily on what's come before, and simply jumping into a series at its best rated episode may not actually allow it to put its best foot forward. A while back, The Verge published an article about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah, The Verge, the people that can't put computers together properly, I'm gonna trust them.
That got widely dunked on, advising that people put off by the series' tonally wonky introduction skip forward to one of its better standalone episodes to see for themselves how great it really gets.
So why is it okay for you to tell people that it's perfectly fine to skip through JoJo parts? So either it's fine for everyone, or it's not. So why does The Verge not have the right to say so, but you do? The Verge is just as stupid as you are.
The one they chose to highlight was Season 2, Episode 7, Zuko Alone, and I can see why someone might think it's a good intro to the series on paper. It is one of the best written episodes, and because Zuko is, alone in it, familiarity with the show's cast isn't required to understand the bulk of its story.
But you're focusing on the introduction to him.
The problem, in practice, is that the heart of that story is the apex of a character arc that the series has been building toward for 27 straight episodes.
This is the way that they wanted you to experience it. Because by this point in the series, if I'm not mistaken, you guys can correct me, because I see that there's a thing there. So if I'm making a story and 27 episodes in, or whenever the source material says that it is, if I'm saying, man, this character suffered a lot, better put their backstory kind of placed here while they discover themselves after you've already seen them probably do something. I don't know anything about the Last Airbender lore, but if they've been building up this character for, I don't know, 12 episodes before this, I think that this is an appropriate insertion right here.
You can certainly appreciate the things that are good about the episode out of context, but the things that make it great will be utterly incomprehensible to anyone who's not familiar with Zuko and Iroh's journey to that point, or their complicated relationship with the gang.
So again, I am asking you, Geoff, why is it okay for you to say that people can skip JoJo parts, but it's not okay for The Verge to tell you to do so in episodes?
That's gang with 2 A's, by the way, a pun that makes about as much sense outside of text as Zuko alone does out of context.
That's a funny one.
Considering that the question of who Zuko will become under his uncle's influence is a big part of what makes them both interesting villains in the first season, you could even argue that starting there might harm your viewing experience overall. It certainly has the potential to blunt the impact of episodes like The Storm and The Blue Spirit, but that said, I do know some people, anime fans, who have been turned off by Avatar in its first episode, so
how would they have been turned off by the first episode if that's the one that they watched to get into it? Why is this not making any sense?
I do see the value in the idea behind the article, and I would instead suggest that such folks dip their toes in with the series' first two-parter, Winter Solstice. Starting at episode 7, this mini-arc comes early enough in the series that it doesn't really work from or spoil any major moments of character growth. It also serves as an introduction to a major part of Avatar's setting, the spirit world, and that takes up a lot of the episode, so...
But why, again, I'm struggling to understand why we think it's okay for everybody else to skip some JoJo parts, but it's not good that The Verge told you to do so. But now you're saying that, yeah, you can probably skip to episode 7? What is this ass-backwards logic?
You don't really need the context of 6 prior episodes worth of world building to get it. It highlights what each member of Team Avatar brings to the table pretty well, and the B-plot with Zuko and Iroh lets you get to know them as individuals before they're thrown into conflict with Aang in the second part of the storyline. That second part, for its part, gives the main cast even more chances to shine, does a lot to establish the fascistic rot that has infested even the most sacred corners of the Fire Nation, while showing us that there are still good people resisting it there, and demonstrates how satisfying the series' non-episodic narrative payoffs can really be.
This seems like a bunch of fluff for nothing that is actually telling us why we should maybe be skipping JoJo parts. This is telling me why I should not ever watch Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Is that how I'd want to watch Avatar for the first time? No.
Then why are we arguing about it?
But for someone who's seen a bit of the pilot and thinks its peculiar blend of anime action and Nicktoons goop humor just isn't for them, Winter Solstice offers a chance to glimpse just how good the series gets without really spoiling anything that comes before or after it.
But to get the full experience, though, you would need to watch the other episodes. So why in the world would I skip through the first episode, the first 6 episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, if that gives me insight on who these characters are before episode 7, where you said that it would be appropriate to enter in the series? This makes no sense, Geoff.
And if that's what it takes to get someone to watch one of the best shows ever, it's totally worth sacrificing the theoretical ideal that they were never going to experience. And even then, in a lot of cases, it is kind of presumptive to just assume that the release order is the ideal way to experience a story.
But what if I wanted to watch, God forbid I ever wanted to, The Legend of Korra? Why in the world would anyone ever want to watch that anyways? But let's say I wanted to watch The Legend of Korra, and then I didn't watch the original Last Airbender. Is it acceptable then, Geoff Thu?
Sure, in the case of Avatar, which follows the same cast of characters as they develop progressively while working toward a singular goal, watching every episode in order except The Great Divide makes a lot of sense. But sometimes a non-linear narrative can be more satisfying in its own way. And sometimes the linear path is kind of covered in broken glass for the first 20 feet or so, and you really just want to go around it.
But to get the... I can't wrap my head around it. But his whole point was, I can see why the Don't Skip JoJo parts fans would not want you to skip. It's to get the full experience of the entire JoJo story. And the same could be applied here. I wouldn't want you guys to skip the first 6 episodes because then there might be some important story, but, according to him, you wouldn't miss anything anyways. So why in the world would I still want to skip? Painful as it may be, 6 episodes, 20 feet, whatever, that still makes no sense.
Okay, this is a very brave and controversial take that no JoJo fans ever heard before, but
oh boy, let's get ready.
Phantom Blood isn't the best act.
Okay, we can go ahead and just disregard any opinion from this point forward. If we hadn't already, you can definitely do so now.
Actually, it's weirdly paced. Fully half of its cast is entirely forgettable, like nobody would remember Dyer without Straits, and we only remember him because of Part 2.
But you wouldn't know who that is unless you watched Part... Do you see my point?
And while its action is certainly bizarre, it's not particularly cool or dramatically satisfying outside the 2 fights with Dio, and maybe that one bit where Jack the Ripper pops out of a horse.
Does this dude remember anything from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Araki was still figuring out what the series should be as he wrote it, and while it gets good toward the end, it shows. The anime...
It gets good towards the end because you're building up to Dio and his newfound army. He's living in a fucking castle. He's ready to try to exterminate Jonathan. Jonathan just got to him first.
It does tweak some of those problems and fix the part's ugly Fist of the North Star clone artwork, but
this dude really just said that this is clone artwork of Fist of the North Star. Never mind that this was somewhat inspired by Fist of the North Star. That's why Jonathan dresses the way that he does. This clone?
But still, if I didn't have a JoJo fanatic friend telling me as every episode aired, yeah, it's rough, but stick with it, trust me, it gets good, honestly, I probably would have dropped it around episode 5 or 6.
Because things are too hard to understand. I'm sorry, Geoff Thu. All of us have great thinking skills and can comprehend how episodes work. If that were the case, why did you watch Dragon Ball? Because they did nothing for like 5 episodes in a row and you still stuck through that apparently.
Don't get me wrong, Phantom Blood has its good points. Those Dio fights are legendary, his childhood feud with JoJo is fun, if a bit slow, and if you dig the gothic horror aesthetic, it immediately gains 2 bonus points, but the space between those great moments is wide and rough, and it's still a pretty off-putting introduction to the series overall.
Because you need a jumping off point. So when you're watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the first episode gives you the overall villain of the entire series. It gives you the overall protagonist of the entire series. The bloodline starts here. This is literally the origin story. This is the very beginning, so you don't have to go... You can't go... First of all, you can't go backwards from part 1 anyways. But you can only go forward. Again, media back then, when you're comparing it to Dragon Ball Z, for example, it didn't have Dragon Ball existing already here in America. So why are we bringing up the fact that this is slow when it's building the story for you?
I know more than one person who bounced off Phantom Blood, even with encouragement, and only came to love JoJo after checking out Stardust Crusaders.
So he skipped part 2, so now we know the kind of friends you deal with.
Frankly, unless you're a big gothic horror nerd, I think you'll get a better first impression starting with any other part, and the manga's own history kind of validates that position. From what I can gather, JoJo languished in relative obscurity within the pages of Shonen Jump until parts 3 and 4 drew in new readership with the more unique battle concept of stands.
Okay, so this gentleman, Geoff Thu, has obviously never seen anything outside of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure really be a thing. The reason it was popular is because here anyways, is that it was kind of popular in Japan, but even then, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was still one of the well-written parts of Shonen Jump magazine. So if you guys remember a game called Famicom Jump is a game that incorporated a lot of different properties from Shonen Jump as their anniversary was coming around. In it, they had part 1 and part 2, and you could play through them in the Famicom Jump games. But apparently those weren't popular. Apparently. I mean, I don't know how we're really basing it off of that, but sure, if people want to see fights, some of the most manly shit happens in part 2. Part 3 is just kind of, not.
Having Japanese protagonists and a modern setting probably didn't hurt either. People tend to like things that are like things they already like.
My brain just hurt. What?
Hurt either. People tend to like things that are like things they already like.
Sure, in a weird sense, I can see that. I guess. By the way, thank you, Joshua Perez, for the $5.26 that says Geoff is a soy boy, has he him in his profile, and a far leftist. Yeah, I don't really like to gauge their arguments based off of that solely, but no, I would definitely agree. He's a big fucking idiot. And also, I can't see his profile because he has me blocked. But, you know, what else is new?
They're more likely to relate to characters who share common points of reference with them, too.
You guys ever cling to a character of a different color skin than you? Do you guys ever just want to see a character that just might be completely different from you? Maybe you want to change things up a little bit? Of course not. That would be terrible.
And across 8 parts, JoJo has the potential to leverage those principles to draw in a wide and eclectic range of people. Fans of gangster movies, Twin Peaks, Indiana Jones, and Junji Ito manga.
Okay.
But if you want to draw those people into the fandom, you gotta let them gravitate toward what they like most first.
That's not how that works. You don't get to have people come into a thing that they may not like the other parts and then trash it. I mean, let's be real. JoJo itself is not a bad series. I think JoJo is really good. It's just the fandom that kind of, shit it up a little bit with their unfunny, is that a JoJo reference? Those are kind of cringe. I will give him that. But overall, I would say that if you are into those types of things, sure, you might not enjoy part 5 as much as someone else. But that doesn't mean you still skip any parts, Geoff.
Because if they do, then JoJo will become a thing they already like, and they'll be more likely to check out and appreciate what's good about the other parts that they might otherwise never have watched or read.
So when you see part 5 and then you're noticing that people have stands and they start talking about stands, do you never just want to go back to part 3 where they literally explain it? So even if you like, gangster movies, if you will, like part 5, and they start talking about stands, part 3 explains it. I don't think you're getting it here.
I no longer regret how I started that anime cheat sheet video, but I do regret that I didn't end it by calling on viewers to watch and read the rest of JoJo if they like part 5.
But you already told them what happens in it, so why the fuck would they read it now?
I figured they would. Unlike some of the people who got mad at that video, I don't think anyone's dumb enough to honestly see 24 minutes of jokes as a suitable substitute for over 40 hours of television.
Then why'd you make the video, Geoff?
But I still wish I'd hedged that bet. Because I do think that everyone who's interested in JoJo will get the most out of it if they watch and read every part of it. Barring there being some aspect of a part that they just can't tolerate, like that one Nazi who's a main character in part 2. I know that's off-putting to a lot of people.
It's really not, because it's a part of the story. It takes place during the part of the story.
I just don't think they need to do it in order. JoJo's parts are designed to work as standalone stories, and
by the way, so something that's bothering me. Hang on, let me go back a second.
Part 2, I know that's off-putting to a lot of people. I just don't think they need to do it in order.
Does Geoff know why the Nazis were there? Does he know why the German people were there? They had facilitated Santana, and the Speedwagon Foundation was on their way to kind of, help with that. That's why they had the excursion to go, scope out the Pillarmen. Of course they wouldn't know that, because that's a part that they skipped.
JoJo's parts are designed to work as standalone stories, and while you will miss the context for some plot elements or character moments in any given part that you watch before its predecessors, that context is never crucial to enjoying the main storyline or to understanding the current cast of characters.
So if I go to part 3, Geoff, let's assume that I go watch part 3 and they're fighting Dio, and because I didn't watch any of the previous parts, do I still know who Dio is? Oh, it's because it's the self-contained story, but I don't know that Dio is hundreds of years old. I missed the context. Again, if he can see the point that you want to get the full experience of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, why would you skip parts? Why would you encourage people actively to skip parts of JoJo when it gives you the full context of the series? It's like in part 2, they said, well, you can tell how someone's a vampire because they don't breathe. Like, you can't see their breath. But he wouldn't know that because they explained it in part 1 as well.
Except recurring ones, of course, but besides Joseph in part 3, they always take on supporting roles anyway. There's even some potential fun to be had in discovering connections between the parts out of sequence, and I think there are some cases where not knowing certain things about past parts can even enhance the power of later story elements.
How?
Which is why, inspired by the now famous Machete Order for Star Wars,
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Did we really just do this right here? Wait a minute.
Past parts can even enhance the power of later story elements. Which is why, inspired by the now famous Machete Order.
There's no Machete Order here. Why are we doing this with Star Wars? Again, they started with this one, A New Hope. They explained everything for the most part because the order of which the movies came out was right here. They hadn't really processed any more Star Wars media probably until around The Return of the Jedi. And then they started making comic books a little bit thereafter. So when episode 1 came out, people were like, oh yeah, that matches with this, or this doesn't match with this. But in order to get the full story of how Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker and how he came from angsty teen to a little small child here, you would watch it from episode 1 all the way through to get the full enjoyment. Obviously, dates are irrelevant at this point because we now have a definitive episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can probably stop at 7 because the other ones afterwards are awful.
For Star Wars, I've come up with my own basement order for JoJo.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
I'll give that to you now so that anyone who's watching this and wants to try JoJo out this way can stop the video and do so without being spoiled. Then I'll explain why I made the choices I did.
I really got nothing. I know I'm about to be very upset and disappointed, but I want you to know that this is all from a place of love. Hashtag Necro no bully. We're not going to bully him. We're just going to watch this. We're going to leave our nice little dislike, give him some words of encouragement, and leave him on his way.
For the basement order, you start with part 4.
No! Oh my god, no!
Diamond is Unbreakable, then watch part 2, Battle Tendency, which starts at episode 10 of season.
I think he's doing this from...
Season 1. After that, you jump to Part 5, Golden Wind, followed by the first season of Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, and after episode 24 of that, you finally hop back to watch Part 1,
So why are we doing this order? If we can't watch it in the original order in which it came out, why are we not watching it in chronological order, Geoff?
Phantom Blood, and cap the anime off with the Battle in Egypt arc of Part 3.
So we don't even get, like, the full... manga. He's just telling us to go to episodes and arcs and everything. You know, I would think that this is a trolling video, but seeing as how Geoff Thu made this video and he was dead set on telling you how this goes, I don't think it's a joke anymore, guys.
Then you can read part 6 of the manga, Stone Ocean. 7 and 8 are in their own continuity, so you can worry about those separately, but...
No, because then in JoJo Leon, if you guys don't know, let me go ahead and spit some facts to you. In JoJo Leon, they reference Johnny Joestar and how he collected the body parts of Jesus. But you wouldn't know that without Steel Ball Run. So why can't we just change those around? Because then if he references the story, then we can just go to Steel Ball Run, according to you, Geoff. You fucking jerk.
You really should read them because they are the best parts of JoJo, hands down.
Because they are bizarre. Get it?
Now, here's the rationale for why I put the parts in this order. The story of JoJo is a story of long-standing family legacy, but...
But they wouldn't know that out of order, dude.
That legacy is fractured by tragic circumstance, by familial estrangement, and by hidden infidelity, such that no JoJo is fully aware of their inherited destiny until it calls upon them.
So, I like how he showed the picture of Jotaro, looking at the picture of his friends. Here, let me go back so we can see
JoJo,
it.
familial estrangement, and legacy is fractured by tragic
this. So he shows this. So if you start at part 4, right? This is how he's trying to do the big brain strategy with you. So you look at this picture when you're watching part 4, and he says, man, who are those people? I wish I knew about their story. And then you go back and you would have to watch it again. So you skip around, and then you realize that you're skipping more than you need to. Just watch part 1. Just watch part 1. Because then if you're watching it from part 1 all the way to 4 in the right order, part 3 explains who all these people are, why this picture exists. But no, we have to skip JoJo parts. Amazing.
Circumstance, by familial estrangement, and by hidden infidelity, such that no JoJo is fully aware of their inherited destiny until it calls upon them.
Who's this dude? I guess I won't find out until I skip around on some more parts.
By watching the series in this sequence, we're able to discover the Joestar legacy alongside the characters who are unwittingly swept up in it, and thus better relate to them and their confusion and curiosity before going back to see how it all began.
But why not just see how it all began? It's literally right there. It's right there on the internet.
In part 4, for instance, a defining aspect of Josuke's character is the fact that his father is a total stranger to him. And by starting here, we get to meet Joseph Joestar as he does, seeing him first as a doddering old fool before slowly discovering his true heroic nature through his actions. This sets us up for an exciting reveal when we finally get to see Joseph in his prime in part 2, and there's a neat...
But you can see that in order. I'm not getting it, dude. You can see all of these in order. They're available. This isn't where the story comes out. Okay, chat. This isn't where the story comes out in broken up sequences. If part 5 had been animated first and then people started asking questions, this would be acceptable. But this is not the case. It is literally there for you to see part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can go back and you can watch all of them in order. Stop doing this.
Bit of narrative symmetry in jumping back from one time his wallet was stolen to another. I also chose part 4 to start because Jotaro explains how stands work in the first episode, and while it's not as metaphysically comprehensive as the exposition at the start of part 3, it absolutely gets the job done.
No, it doesn't, because he explains, well, he gets explained too in part 3 at the very beginning, the jail part, how stands work, their mental image. Just watch the fucking parts.
In Battle Tendency, again, we're put in a similar position to Joseph and to a lesser extent Caesar, learning about Hamon as they do and knowing their ancestors only through the stories Granny Erina and Speedwagon tell about them. And then when we get into part 5, we, like Giorno, know next to nothing about his father, Dio, besides the fact that he was a really bad dude and also a vampire who set this whole stand arrow business in motion way.
Yeah, and you know what we could have done? Do you know what we could have done, Geoff? We could have watched all the fucking parts as they came out.
Back when. Dio doesn't really factor into the Gangstar saga anyway.
But you just said it's the stand arrows. The stand arrows are... It's what happens to Polnareff. Polnareff in part 5. I can't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but the two things are together.
At least not until the end, when Polnareff gets involved, and curiosity about him makes for a great narrative bridge into part 3.
Yeah, we'll see, it already spoiled it. Sorry, I was gonna try to keep it a secret. As you can tell, he is a guy.
And curiosity about him makes for a great narrative bridge into part 3.
Just watch part 3.
Now, obviously, by starting Stardust Crusaders near the end of the series, we do undercut the big reveal of what Dio and Jotaro's powers are, but frankly, I think the ship has kinda sailed on people being surprised by time-stopping in JoJo, and besides that, this viewing order leaves the mystery of Dio himself intact.
It doesn't. Because they always talk about how they defeated Dio in Egypt. Does he forget that that's an actual line of dialogue?
We feel his influence, but we don't get to know him directly as
Then that's awful storytelling. Start from part 1.
a character until we jump back in time to his origin story when the Crusaders at last reach Egypt.
But life's a journey, not a destination. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Feathered Dragon, for the £2. It says, what even is this logic? It's fucking stupid. That's the easiest way I can put this.
Curiosity about who Dio was and how he became who he is will hopefully be strong enough at this point to push viewers through the slow start of Phantom Blood, which should also feel a bit more tense overall.
But you know how it ends. This is like going back after you know that Darth Vader is Luke's father. It's like, oh man, so that's why he did all of those things. It's supposed to make your brain just go, wow, we accomplished a lot. We know everything. So that's why he did bad thing. That's what this is wow, that's how he became evil. When that's not how it should be. All of your tense moments are from beginning to end.
Since we know what the mask does going into it.
But that ruins the suspense. So let me go ahead and tell you guys a secret. I don't particularly care about spoilers all that much, but I am of the high brain power that Bring Halo Back thinks that I am not, where I can see both sides of it, where people don't like things spoiled for them. So if you're watching JoJo out of order, for instance, then you're gonna get confused when you see, oh, well, yeah, I don't know what this thing does. I don't know what the mask does. Why is it so important? And then you look over at part 1, and then you say, That's how this all started. It's not supposed to be that moment.
This flashback also serves to break up the repetitive fistfight of the week formula that defines Stardust Crusaders, which can get a bit tedious when stretched across 48 straight episodes.
But all of those people are assassins sent by Dio. Of course, you wouldn't know that because you skip parts.
In my opinion, anyway. Theoretically, this order should turn the rough viewing experience of both parts into a much smoother ride to the grand finale of Dio's world.
You build up to get to... Oh my god.
Which is still, in my opinion, one of the best goddamn fights in this series, and should make for a heck of a satisfying finale to it. From there, if you're so inclined, you can go on to read Stone Ocean, or otherwise wait for it to be animated.
But why? Because technically you could start with Stone Ocean and be like, oh man, this girl's in jail? Who's that? Oh, it's the daughter of Jotaro Kujo. But, oh wait, it's a callback to the beginning of Stardust Crusaders, because that's how it started in the... I can't implore you guys enough. Please do not skip JoJo parts. If you really want the full story, it's available for you guys to read virtually anywhere. You can watch the anime anywhere you want. Episodes 1 to fucking a million. Part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all that stuff. It's available for you to see. You don't have to wait for part 5 to be animated first, and then they say, maybe we should do part 2 next.
Either way, you'll be primed to enjoy it as a celebration of everything you've watched so far, and as a more direct continuation of Dio and Jotaro's respective legacies. So, is this basement order the truly definitive way to watch JoJo?
I really hope he says no. Please, chat, let's hope he says no.
Of course not, and also, that's not really the point of this thought exercise.
This is a thought exercise, so you're punking us. So what is the proper way then? Oh, wait, that's right, reading it from part 1 to 8.
What I hope I've demonstrated with it is that there can be pros and cons to...
No, you've only shown me cons. There's literally, virtually no pros to this.
Either watching the series in release order or shaking things up. And you won't necessarily enjoy it less if you watch it out of sequence. Depending on the order, you may even get to enjoy some satisfying setups and payoffs that don't exist in the linear JoJo timeline.
You know, a common complaint that I hear, if you guys are weebs that I know you are, you guys have probably played Final Fantasy VII. I know a lot of you have. So, in Final Fantasy VII, the remake, I hear that they kind of stretched out some things, but they kind of didn't, do a good job with it. But a lot of the things that people liked about the original Final Fantasy VII was that it was linear. They don't want an open world game. They want something that's a linear thing. Or maybe it's not so linear. I know with Halo Infinite, the open world thing, people did not like it. They said, I don't want this open world Halo game. I want my linear handcrafted episodes of levels that I go through. I want to be able to have this linear story instead of going from mixed mashed missions scattered across an open world in this ring. I don't think that he gets this part. People know the JoJo linear path, but that's because it literally tells you everything you need to know in an exact order.
And that's not only true of this watch order. Obviously, not every possible random approach you can take to JoJo, or any other massive franchise for that matter, will deliver as smooth a ride as something planned out by someone who knows the material, or the standard chronological order. But that's where you, as a JoJo fan, can help your friends find a way of tackling the series that works for them and is still satisfying overall.
Watch part 1 all the way to part 5 as it's out right now. That's my advice to you, my friends, here in the chat. Go watch part 1, and then you complete it, and you watch part 2, you complete that one as well, and then you move to part 3, you complete that one, and then you go to part 4, you complete that one too, and then guess what? Surprise, surprise, you get to part 5, and then you complete that one too. There, I just saved you guys the stress of having to figure out where you should start.
If you can get past the idea that there's this one perfect way they have to go about it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The more JoJo you have in your life, the better.
So watch it from part 1 to part 5.
So the best approach to exploring the series, in my opinion, is whatever gets you the most excited about it.
I love how we're hiding behind the shield of, this is just my opinion. You guys can do whatever you want that works best for you. No, Geoff, that's not how this works. It is almost objectively the best way to watch part 1 through part 5. You skip around, you lose things.
Even if that means you only ever watch the Handsome Mafia Variety Hour or Scooby Hairdo and fill in the blanks with a wiki. Or you go full chaotic evil and exclusively read the light novels. Honestly,
Why would... Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'd love to hear what someone who does that thinks of JoJo. And
Well, they're invalid anyways. So... Why did we make two graphs to talk about where you should start with JoJo? Lawful good. You mean the actual way to do it. Chronological order, part 1 through 5. Neutral good starts with part 3, then goes back. But why would... Chaotic good, the basement order, which, by the way, you should never do. This is not chaotic good. This is just stupid. Lawful neutral only watches the anime. There are anime onlys. They don't have to care about it. But even then, you start from part 1 and you go to part 5. True neutral only reads the parts that sound interesting. Yeah, I guess you could, but they wouldn't enjoy it as much as people that have seen all of it. Chaotic neutral only reads parts with the best memes. I think that this should just be labeled the stupid category right here. Only reads the light novels. This isn't necessarily stupid, but there's a reason that it's a manga. The neutral evil is only watches part 3 through 8. Why you would do that makes no sense. Other than you just don't care about time skips. And then lawful evil, which is only watches part 1 and 2. Technically, it could end there, because you're already under the assumption that Dio is dead until you get to the end of part 2, and then they hint at it, and then you can just say, wow, that could be a good setup. But unfortunately, part 3 was made.
And the same goes for anyone who's experienced the series differently from me. Hearing varying perspectives on things I like only ever enhances my own appreciation of them. That's a big part of why I make these videos and still read the comments, despite the advice of my peers.
Maybe you should start listening to them, Geoff. Maybe you should stop making bad volcanic takes like this.
And that is the single best reason I can give my fellow JoJo fans to not only let part skippers be and let them join your conversations.
No, they're not going to join my conversation if they skip parts. Sorry. If they start asking me why thing is happening, watch it in order.
About it, but also to straight up encourage people who might side-eye the series for its length or the pushier parts of its fan base to ignore what they're supposed to do and help them enjoy JoJo in a way that makes sense to them.
I don't know if Geoff has any critical thinking skills.
The bigger and more varied this fan base gets, the more interesting it'll be for all of us who take part in it.
May I remind you what happened to the Legend of Korra and the Last Airbender things? I just want you to remember that those are things that are currently happening right now on Twitter, and it's not enjoyable for anyone.
I'm Geoff Thu, professional shitbag.
A good thing he's aware. That's the end of the video. We did it, and we only killed all of our brain cells to get to it. I'm very happy that that was the case. Now you guys don't have to suffer on your own and watch this video about skipping JoJo parts. I wish there was more that could be said, but it's very simple. I think Geoff has done a good job in telling us why I shouldn't have made that original video. I was actually going to make one on his video about the part 5 primer, the cheat sheet, if you will. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty easy, but the whole video would just be me saying, read all of the parts in order. But instead we had this fun stream. We got to hang out, and wow, we got to hang out for quite a while and watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure be dismantled by a person who clearly doesn't get how stories work. Him and Misty Cronexia both. I don't think that they'll ever truly understand how stories are supposed to be, but maybe that's just a me optimistically thinking about the future. But I'm glad that we were able to watch this together as a family, and we were able to experience this trauma. I probably owe you guys more money than you think, because every time that I sit here with a new video, I wish I could tell you that it was from a place of love. Now, if you're wondering, I know that oh man, thank you, Mad Beast Yeti, for the Canadian $15 that says JoJo the worst. Stands are dumb. Dio's best girl. Hashtag Necro no bully. Yeah, we're not bullying here, by the way. This is not a bully stream. We're just having fun laughing at really volcanic and nuclear takes here. So I guess that's the thing that's happening. So I think that's really all I have. We've been here for an hour and 15 minutes. So if you guys have something better to do, which I know you do, all of you guys have important lives to get to rather than watch Mother's Basement just be a special boy on the internet, you can go to that video right now. It's linked in the description, as every video that we ever cover. I have a new video that's up currently for Patreon people and for channel members. So if you're either of those two things, the new video for next week is out right now, and you can watch it in all of its entirety. And Necro bullies his mods. Oh my god. Edgy, if I bullied you, I would give you a big ol' hug. But you guys stay safe from the Rona, and also make sure that you wash your hands and wear your mask, even if it's just for like 5 minutes. It's fine. Just do whatever you do. But I hope you guys are safe. Thank you guys for stopping by the live stream. If you haven't already, make sure you follow me on Twitch, where we do streams. I might have to shift my schedule around tonight, but usually on Saturdays we do story games. And right now we're in the midst of Death Stranding. And no, I'm not smashing the BB. I promise we're not. So